Welcome to reviewing every game ever. Today I'm reviewing a Monster Sanctuary. And I want to let you guys know, as we're on this quest to review every game ever, I appreciate your guys' and gals' support. Developed by MoRide Games, Monster Sanctuary is a monster-raising RPG that I'd like to take a few minutes of your time to cover before scoring, while getting into a lot of different aspects of the game, both positive and negative, without spoiling too much for you. The game opens to show you the Monster Sanctuary, a beautiful place where monsters and humans mostly reside in peace together, and some humans even train those monsters and become monster keepers. As the heir to a long line of special spectral monster keepers, the game lets you start by picking a starting monster. Each monster is strong in their own way, with unique designs that are all pretty sleek in their own right, and especially colorful, which I enjoy. And it's no surprise that the starting monsters look so good, because the game excels in its pixel art style, blending the right amount of nostalgia with a very lively look at the same time. Nothing ever feels dull or muted, but also nothing ever feels extravagant. The game also starts off with a solid but not life-changing soundtrack, which we'll hear a few songs from in this video, some of the ones I particularly like. None of them are bad, just none of them are gonna get stuck in your head either. The first actions you will do in Monster Sanctuary are battling and obtaining monsters. Novel idea, huh? You start off with the classic cute RPG slime, and he's got a nice little woo face. And I love when monster raisers build up from lowly monsters to more extravagant ones. It just feels like a nice logical progression. This will continue with caterpillars and simple bird monsters and the like. But a cool thing about Monster Sanctuary is even these lowly early game monsters are completely usable and designed with care to look good as well. Monsters won't stay lowly forever, as there is an evolution mechanic in this game through evolution items they can get as rare drops, quest rewards, or through RNG reward boxes. Evolution doesn't necessarily make the monster better, it just changes how it plays. These monsters can be viewed in your monster journal with awesome original artwork. This reminds me of being a kid skimming through a game manual to see full artwork of sprite characters in older games. It's really nostalgic, and it really adds a lot of personality and character to a game that's already brimming with personality and character, and just excels in every way at it. While the game has a 6-monster party limit, you can switch out between the entire pool of all your monsters at any time too. You never feel too pressured to stick with any certain team combination, but can experiment as much as you please. The party menu also serves for inventory, equipment management, and an in-game food system that gives stat bonuses to your monsters based on the last 3 things that they ate. Every monster has more than one way it can be used due to these differing elements and variables that control them. The bulk of gameplay in Monster Sanctuary is combat. It's a nice mix of monster raising style done in 3v3 fights, with wild monsters primarily, RPG reminiscent. A turn will play out with your monsters using different skills and items that build up a combo meter, which can be seen on the top left of the screen during fights. The higher the percentage, the bigger boost the next attack gains, so how you plan out a turn will vastly change the last monster's attack within the turn. After you win a battle, you'll get a screen that shows you your rating for that battle based on how you performed. This will decide the level of reward you get. Getting a high net rating gets a better chance for rare rewards, including the monsters you just fought, which is the primary way to obtain all monsters in this game, so every single fight feels a little meaningful and difficult for the reward. After fights you may level up, giving you skill points to go down your skill tree with, every monster having a somewhat limited amount of skill points before max level, so you have to pick which way you want to mold the monster. With each one having more than one style it can do, say tank, DPS, heal, buffs, or more. Some of these skills are active and others are passive, which will affect battles or the whole party in general. One of the other styles of fights in this game is champion monsters. These are special monsters that are causing destruction thanks to the chaos being caused by the evil alchemist cult hiding within the monster sanctuary. Driving the game is one of the two styles of primary boss fights. These monsters will sometimes become regular appearing monsters later or have other ways of obtaining them, but they won't keep their special skills they have for that boss fight passive or active. Usually these fights play out with you using 3 monsters against the singular 1 boss monster, so they're pretty tanky. The other primary style of boss fights are keeper duels. These will build to 6v6 fights against other monster keepers, and I found these were challenging in a good way. Some later game ones requiring multiple tries for gamers of my skill level. Usually these will be against other main characters or against the alchemist causing the champion monster outbreaks as they search for power and certain items hidden in the sanctuary dungeons. These fights will move the plot forward usually or net special rewards. The keepers you fight will be pretty good at using their monsters, which will force you to build your team a bit better, or they might lend you to trying to defeat their monsters in a certain order that break their combos. These fights also may serve to inspire you on how to build your own team or utilize your own team. This is also how the player versus player online battles work. The beginning of fights will give you a preview of what elements monsters are strong to, weak to, whether they're magical or physical damage, and other variables. So the game never requires you to remember every single detail about every monster, since there are lots of options for how to use all of them. The world of Monster Sanctuary is a fairly good size and essentially made in a way that feels like you're exploring new dungeons with every section, and can be completed with some wiggle room in which ones you go to first. And you will explore lots of this world, and probably have a great time doing it. I get onto games for having too bland or way overworked environments, having a hard time finding the balance of having simple level designs that have just the right amount of detail to let them shine, which I believe helps keep me engaged, and Monster Sanctuary does this pretty darn well. As you look at these different areas I'm showcasing, they all feel pretty different and pretty lively in their own respective rights, without ever feeling like, oh, that's way too much. You won't have to backtrack a ton in Monster Sanctuary, as the game does offer quick travel in the form of teleporters. As the world expands, these do become more and more useful, so I am glad they included them. Games should focus on fun and not pad gameplay time with backtracking elements as much as possible. When you're traveling in between areas, you will often stop at the Keeper Stronghold, which will serve as a headquarters for preparations and bonus elements and drive the story. You can peruse the shop for potions, equipment, and stat bonus foods. You can go to the blacksmith to upgrade equipment with crafting materials. You can donate extra monsters to the Stronghold army, which will give rewards to further motivate you to focus on getting good scores in your battles in the wild. You can go unlock the Keeper's Tower to refight boss fights, Keeper's duels, and other bonus features. A fun element that encourages having different monsters in this game is the use of monsters' differing abilities in the overworld, such as destroying false walls, illuminating a dark room, burning through thorny vines, and more. These will often progress the story, find a chest, or help you solve a puzzle. And they make the monsters feel more involved in the game and encourage you to catch lots of different kinds of monsters, as some will be needed to progress the story in general. If you're a gaming expert like me, wait 1 second, hold on. Just got wait, whoa, that was close that time. Okay, no, that's okay, my finger slipped that time. Okay, well, see, the bird didn't grab me that time, and see, the monster powers, they're really precise, and it's okay, the platforming's good. Speaking of puzzles, most every dungeon has at least one, which helps break up the somewhat variety-lacking gameplay at times. Most of them take a smidge of thought, but they rarely will send you to a guide or needing help. Usually it's just trial and error and has a pretty okay balance. The game does have some side quests, but it could use a few more to help add a bit of variety, and they can use a bit of variety within those side quests as well to kind of break up the monotony of the game at times. The game has a button for talking to your spectral familiar that will give you tips for main or side quests, which is helpful without being overly hand-holding, and I'm glad they put it in there because at times you could get a little lost of what you were doing. This game has a few different costume changes that can be unlocked in various ways. Some of them are little secrets that give you something to explore, maybe look up online how you're doing, or see if you can figure it out yourself. Various color swaps, and it isn't too bad, though it also isn't overly exciting. The game has a light and dark shifted monster function later, which allows you to gain different abilities on your monster, and it color changes them. It doesn't feel needed in this game, but it does add yet another layer of party building and skill tree consideration. You can use items to flip back and forth between dark and light shifted. This game is a healthy amount of challenge and wants to give you lots of options of how to take on that challenge, which I can appreciate. And dark or light shifting a monster can change completely how you want to approach its skill tree. It also gives you a kind of Pokemon shiny element to collecting them all. The story of this game does try, but it won't wow you. It isn't really a selling point, and at times I easily find myself forgetting about it or even feeling motivated by it at all. The second half of the game definitely tries to build it up a bit more though. This is pretty typical of a lot of monster raising games, so not a huge knock. And the gameplay will do enough to keep you captivated in its place, so I wouldn't worry about it. I also just wouldn't praise it too much. Overall, Monster Sanctuary feels like a game made purposefully with a plan, focusing on gameplay mechanics that mesh well together to try and create deep combat, having a good aesthetic that will touch up a bit of nostalgia without ever feeling like it overly relies on that nostalgia to keep you engaged or captivated. My final score for Monster Sanctuary is an 8.2 out of 10. A great game, worth buying and checking out what else the company has to offer and what they're already working on for the future. And they've added DLC that looks like it's worth getting into as well. Let me know how you felt about Monster Sanctuary in the comments. Like and comment and subscribe and all those things if you want to support the channel and go on my quest with me to review every game ever.